Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another interview on Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And I thought I would have a special guest on today to talk about the situation in Pakistan, specifically in regards to the once president Imran Khan. As you may have known, Imran Khan was unfortunately arrested a little while ago. It was released, and now his whole possibility of being reelected again is all in dispute. So, I don't know a lot about the subject. It does fascinate me. I have seen Brother Imran's interviews, on various news outlets, and he seems like a very, very fascinating character. And here at Islam for Europeans, we care about the entire ummah as a whole. We belong to the Muslim ummah. We wish nothing but the best for our brothers and sisters all across the world. And Pakistan is, it's a majority Muslim nation. It's, and Ilya Zabegovic, who's the founder of Modern Bosnia, had a lot of great things to say about Pakistan, because both Bosnia and Pakistan were countries that started with an Islamic ideal. And, inshallah, been obviously a lot of growing pains with that. But without further ado, I have Brother Asad coming from North Carolina. How are you doing, brother? From the Straight Path Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. One correction: Imran Khan was the prime minister.
Oh, Prime Minister. Sorry.
Pakistan has the prime minister system. What's it called? The parliamentary prime minister system. They do have a president. The president is more of a figurehead. I think the current president, I think his name is Dr. Arif Alvi. He's a dentist. He's from Karachi. He's still from Imran Khan's party. He's still the president. But what's it called? But alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. Yeah, the Pakistani politics, they've been complicated since the day Pakistan was, in essence, born or created, or whatever you want to refer to it.
Okay.
They've been complicated, without a doubt. And as most Muslim countries which came after colonization, which is a very complicated and heavy topic, which affects a lot of your content, actually,
Yeah.
and affects our European Muslim brothers and sisters as well. If there's any misunderstandings, usually it always leads back to colonization. We've discussed that privately many times, and it's been discussed on your show many times. So Pakistan was a country which was born out of India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, which was one big piece ruled over by the British East India Company for close to, I think 300, 400 years, some ridiculous amount of time. They weren't the British government technically, but in essence, they had a lot of influence, and a lot of stakeholders were from the British government. Like I said, complicated stuff. A lot of it is history. We may know, we may not know. We may read it. One source may say something, another may say something else. Brutal, took advantage of the people, took advantage of the resources. Even the necklace Camilla was wearing they were saying it's the Lahore diamond necklace. And, those diamonds, they came from Lahore, from one of the Sardars, Sikh families. That's where they came from what I understand, what I read. So there's a lot of like interconnection between England and Pakistan, obviously, and even Imran Khan, who was married to Jemima Goldsmith, who was a British citizen, who actually moved to Pakistan, lived in Pakistan, tried to support Imran Khan in Pakistan, but because of the way Pakistan is, and you'll see this sort of culture in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and other countries of that area, where people will defame somebody, and it doesn't have to do anything with religion. Honestly, a lot of the problems in that area of the world have nothing to do with religion and have more to do with culture, and that's what a lot of people need to understand. And they defamed her, they defamed him. They used to call Imran Khan a Yehudi agent, which just means a Jewish agent. um
Whoa.
yeah, that up until now, that's what they call, a lot of people refer to him as a Jewish agent. And his wife, they were like, oh, she married him so she could find out more about Pakistan, and she actually accepted Islam. She became Muslim. I don't know if she's still Muslim. She says she is, from what I understand.
Okay.
And converting from a Jewish family, a influential Jewish family, the Goldsmiths were a influential family in England. She converted and she was considerably younger than Imran Khan when they got married. Um, converting, becoming Muslim, moving to Pakistan, taking all of those steps, and still not being accepted as a Muslim. It's a hard one to swallow.
Mm,
And she told him, she was like, look, move to England, we can have a great life there, you can have a great life there, we can live. And he didn't want to move to England, he wanted to live in Pakistan and make Pakistan a better country. And I believe his like political fight started in like 1995 or something from then, and he finally became prime minister in 2018. But it was and I'm not giving a synopsis, I'm giving an idea
yeah.
of basically how complicated Imran Khan's journey himself has been. And Imran Khan's journey pre-politics was, he wasn't the most, I would, not to cast doubt on anybody, but he wasn't seen as the most devout Muslim. He wasn't, most cricketers of that era from Pakistan, they would drink, they would womanize, things like that. It was very commonly known. And Imran Khan was, apparently known to be no different than anybody else. So his pre-political career, Imran Khan was very different. He was a typical cricketer, typical. They won the World Cup under his captainship, stuff like that. So Imran Khan was Imran Khan, and his journey up until he became prime minister, and the amount of respect he's gotten from people, it's been really complicated. Honestly, it's not like cut and dry. This is like, we could talk about Imran Khan for like 5 episodes of Islam for Europeans, and then they'd be like, "What is this, Islam for Pakistanis or something?" But go ahead. You must have something. Where should we start? What do you want to ask?
I want to know more about like how the political system uh, operates in Pakistan, because I know
Okay.
in Canada it's
Yeah.
similar to the parliamentary system of the
Mm.
UK, where
Yeah.
you have a general federal election
Yeah.
where all of the areas in Canada, all the 10 provinces, are divided into 300 something
Yeah.
areas called ridings. And
Okay.
each individual party has someone running for that particular riding. And
Yeah.
whoever wins the most seats, they win the general election. Is it similar to that in Pakistan?
It's similar to that. So what generally will happen is they'll have the election like they had in 2018. They'll have the states, right? The provinces, not
Okay,
states.
same
It's
thing
it's a
here.
British system, obviously.
Provincial, yeah.
So yeah, so they'll have provinces, and amongst the provinces they'll have like areas or sectors or whatever you want to call them, and you're gonna run on those. And so in Pakistan, you can actually run on multiple areas. Like you could run for, member of parliament in like three different cities, essentially.
Okay.
But you can only keep one seat, and then they have like another election to decide whatever happens with the seat you abandon. But like, you have your provincial elections, and then sorry, you have your general election for the upper house, and then you have your election for like the provincial house.
Okay. So
they're
it's
they're separate.
bicameral. I see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you have it like that. In 2018 when they had the election, obviously they have like they have in Turkey, they have the alliance system where many parties will ally themselves with other parties. And so Imran Khan's party won the largest amount of seats, but they still had to align themselves. So I think they aligned themselves with one or two smaller parties to hit the threshold and get, whatever was needed. I believe it's like, for example, 360 seats, right? Is the total amount. And they needed 181 or something like that. So they got to that 185 or something, through alliances with different parties. And but they had, I think of their own, they had like about 170 seats. And then you have the opposition, which is made up of like, the old guard of
Mm-hmm.
Pakistani politicians. You have Pakistan Muslim League Noon, which is Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz Sharif, who's in England, who got a delivery of Kentucky Fried Chicken yesterday, at his house in Avonfield. And then you have Maulana Fazl Rahman, who is a religious scholar. With all due respect to his scholarship, people do not like his political stances or his politics at all, myself included. In politics, you have to get associated with people who have less than good character. This is how politics unfortunately works.
Mm-hmm.
And as a scholar, associating yourself with such people who may be not good Muslims, who may be scumbags, who may be cheats, it puts you in a precarious position. And then you have what's it called, the other party, what's it called, Bhutto's party. You remember Bhutto, Benazir Bhutto,
Of
the one who
course.
died many years ago? Yes, yes. So her party is called Pakistan People's Party, and I believe their logo is like a cycle or something. And her husband runs the party now,
Mm.
who was a very corrupt man. They call him Mr. 10% because apparently he makes 10% of every deal that happens in the country. He
Oh.
was he was the president at one point in time of Pakistan, and when he was the president, everything ran through him. Even the president is a figurehead position. They had like three different prime ministers under him, but he was the president the whole time.
Oh, wow.
And and then they have a multitude of other parties. His son is pretty heavily involved. His son is the foreign minister currently. So that's how the system is. Imran Khan's government ran the system for about 3.5 years, and then what happened is the opposition got the other smaller party, the one smaller party which was aligned with him. They got them to move away from him,
Mm.
so it basically took away his power, and then they took over, which has been, I believe, like a year and a half now, something like that. They took over last year in Ramadan,
Mm.
I
I
believe.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a big issue. It caused a lot of mayhem, um, because it was a big game. It was a big game. What happened? Um, Obviously, as soon as Imran Khan took over, within a year and a half, COVID happened, and
Mm.
the world's economy collapsed anyway. It was like 2018 was when the signs were showing that the world economy was, on the brink of like some major issues, and then COVID did not help. You have these countries which aren't like the United States, which can't give out like, or even like Canada, which can give out like, stimulus packages and stuff like that to people. These countries can't afford that. In India, they
Mm.
were giving out like 1,000 rupees or something. You can't even buy anything with 1,000 rupees, like to run a house. So,
Mm.
so that, and then like the Pakistani rupee was held up by a lot of money from the old government, Pakistan Muslim League's government. And as soon as they left, they pulled all their money. They pulled all their investments and everything. And all of a sudden, the Pakistani rupee went into a free fall.
Mm.
And as it's known in economics, and if you've studied any sort of finance, um, to get an economy back on track is not possible in 6 months. Usually it takes a cycle of 3 to 5 years at the least.
Mm.
And people were expecting, and Imran Khan did make a mistake. He made a lot of promises before he got elected, which he couldn't hold up, because in politics you barely control anything. You're dependent on like 50 other people at least to make one thing happen.
Mm.
So he made a lot of promises. Oh, we'll turn the economy around, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then when he gets into office, he realizes, oh, this isn't going to be easy. And a lot of people actually left him over the years. A lot of people left him even when he got elected, because they saw that the challenges that lie ahead are real challenges, because the corruption of the past 40, 50, 60 years is no joke.
Mm.
So that's the system, is basically, it's, there's an upper house and then there's a lower house, and then you have your, state elections, if you'll call them, and they decide who's your local township, who's going to control the township, who's going to take care of, whatever the local needs are. And then there's so many multiple systems. They have like, within the city they'll have small towns, right?
Mm.
Or neighborhoods, and then the neighborhoods will have their own like little small government who make sure that the sewage is hooked up to the city sewage and stuff like that. So it's complicated. Pakistan is Pakistan is a Muslim country. Yes. Is it the most Islamic country? Probably no. Is it the most Islamically following country? Probably no. A lot of Pakistan's Islam throughout the country, and I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but if they've gotten this far, they're going to hate me for saying this. A lot of Pakistan's Islam is not based on by the book Islam, by the Quran or Hadith. It's based a lot on local culture
Mm.
of how they understand things, which causes a lot of issues. One of the issues which we've been discussing, one of the brothers here locally accepted Islam, and I was explaining to him that generally speaking, in the 90s, if you had accepted Islam, you would have walked into a masjid. The first thing we would have done is, after you took your shahada, what would you have done, Robert?
You'd have to change his name and put in a shalwar
Exactly.
kameez.
Yeah, change your name. Okay, your name's Bob. Now you're Bilal, right?
Yeah.
That was innocence. Honestly, that was innocently not knowing things, right?
Mm.
Generally speaking, when a white person accepts Islam, generally speaking, more so for the white people, when a white person accepts Islam, we immediately think that there's something wrong with their name. Um, you know, you have to change your name. For the most part, a lot of our African American brothers, a lot of times they come in, they have Muslim names. Like there'll be a brother named Malik or a brother named Tariq or something like that.
Well, for them, it's more about getting back to their roots. I
Getting
mean,
back to the
their
roots as well. Yeah, yeah,
ancestors were Muslims, so for them, I can totally understand why they would want to
yeah,
choose a Muslim name. So I have
yeah,
no problem with them wanting to change the
yeah.
Muslim name.
And even then, a lot of our white brothers, when they become Muslim, they choose to have, you may keep Robert, but then you may take Mahmoud, just because you want to have a name which is, linked to some sort of, some Sahaba or something like that. Something noble, some noble purpose.
Yeah.
So what's it called? A lot of Pakistani religion has a lot of like cultural base, and that can tend to be pretty problematic. Um, and there's a lot of like saint worship, and there's a lot of like you respect your elders, that's one thing, but then they go overboard and they'll be like, touching their feet and
Mm,
giving them kisses on the forehead and
mm,
doing all sorts of weird things, and you're like, where did this come from? And you'll see it, that if you cross over the border, you'll see the same thing happening in like a Hindu house of worship, same exact thing happening. So a lot of these things are more so cultural,
mm,
like even like if your daughter does something despicable, instead of explaining to her that this is a sinful act, you shouldn't have done this. You see a lot of like, murdering, people do murder their children, like even adult children and stuff like that. But it's not just in Pakistan. You go over to India, it's happening there. You
yeah.
go to Nepal, it's happening there, because it's more of a area cultural thing.
Yeah.
So Pakistan is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, founded on August 14th of 1947. But Pakistan has a long way to go. Pakistan has, a lot of problems inside of itself with, you have your religious establishment, a religious group. Then you have an extreme religious group. Then you have an extremely liberal group. And then you have a somewhat liberal group. And then you have these people who are all together like just throw Islam into the fire, and Islam is what's holding us back. And and then you're like, okay, well, why don't we look at why Islam got as popular as it did? It was because of the advancements in all areas of civilization. That
Mm,
when Islam was conjoined, like conjoined twins, when it was conjoined with Islam and worldly knowledge together,
mm,
that was when it was succeeding, and that
mm,
was when it was thriving. There's a sheikh in England, Mufti Abdurrahman Mangera. He, is a very good scholar, mashallah. He's from England. You probably heard him before. Um, he gives talks and he says that all of our religious scholars should also pursue PhDs. And he says it adds an element to your knowledge, and it adds an element to your experience.
mm.
So, and he's like, it's also joins together the two knowledges. So,
Right. Well, that's
it
what
makes
we're trying
sense.
to do here is, because I have a master's degree in applied social psychology.
Yeah.
So, like a lot of these concepts that I talk about, um,
Yeah.
it's not even really thought of in like Dawa
Yeah.
circles. Like, like just the basic fact that you have an open house,
Yeah.
that's not going to be the people who come into the open house is not a representative sample of the whole population. But in
Absolutely
our
not. Yeah.
minds, a lot of for a lot of even like high up level dais or
Yeah.
head of Islamic organizations, this doesn't even cross their minds. Or a dawa booth. Most people have no interest whatsoever to even approach a dawa booth. So, like usually when we're talking about the major duat, they only
Yeah.
interact with either people in the you know, the getting ready to convert mode, like the action phase, and that's why a lot of their dawa is focused on getting people to take their shahada. Because obviously you're not going to approach a dawa booth unless you're, you know, thinking about converting to Islam,
Yeah.
right? Or if you're at least questioning it. Or it's the complete opposite. You're like, David Wood or apostate prophet, totally hating on Islam, and the goal is to intellectually slam dunk them. So a lot of duat have in their head like that, like non-Muslims are comprised of these two extremes with
How are you
nothing in
gonna get
between.
your YouTube views?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the YouTubers are another, like that's a different sample of the population as well. So, when you take someone who converts to Islam, this is not their world. Their world is like
Yeah.
just a general slice of the population. Even people who do convert, I mean, like they're more likely to have a family that has no problem with them converting to Islam because they wouldn't take their shahada publicly and join a Muslim community if there's going to be
Yeah.
no social consequences, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but when getting back to what I was talking about, like no one, I don't know any Muslims to go into this type of field in social psychology that study research and populations and how you do research and what are the biases associated in research. But at the same time, I'm a layman. I wish I had more Islamic knowledge. I just don't have the time. But that's going to be one of the challenges is synthesizing,
Mm.
Islamic knowledge with, knowledge of the world. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
say as an aside. So.
No, no. I mean, it's like I was actually listening to a clip yesterday. It was, it was by Dr. Rania Awad, who's a very well-known, doctor. I believe her area of expertise is like psychology,
Mm,
psychiatry. She's a professor of psychiatry at Stanford. And she's a Muslim sister. She does hijab, mashallah. She gives good talks. And she was giving she was explaining, she was reading a book by Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, who's like, I believe it's ninth century Muslim physician, psychologist, scientist. And she was reading his book, and he was describing OCD.
mm,
And she went to her professor and she explained it to him. And he's like, that can't be possible. And she's like, well, do you know how to read Arabic? He's like, no, I don't. And she's like, no, no, he's exactly explained what OCD is. And she went and she translated it and she brought it to him. And he was in awe that this guy had, in 800 and something, this guy had already described what OCD is.
wow.
And, he was Muslim, well known Muslim, and so are Muslim scholars, and even you see people who are not Muslim like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others who acknowledge the genius of Muslims. And he spoke about the stars and how all these stars have names, Arabic names, and this is the Muslims use the stars to travel. And it's
Mm,
not to say other people didn't, but Muslims were the ones who basically made it famous.
mm,
I know everybody talks about Marco Polo, but Ibn Battuta,
mm,
he was a real traveler. So what's it called? Things like that. The Muslims, that's how we succeed,
mm,
is when we combine everything together and we do it for the greater good.
mm.
And why is somebody going to do it for the greater good? It's to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm, mm. Well,
Um,
getting back to our topic at hand, I'm going to
yeah,
segue into this. Is that
yeah,
I think Imran Khan, like hearing his interviews, he seemed like a man who understood a lot of these internal problems and wanted to find solutions because this is a man who really cares about his country and wants to see a strong Pakistan. And I think that's why he has such mass appeal, as far as I
yeah.
can tell, in Pakistan. So. Um, like what were some of the reforms that he wanted to implement?
So,
Um,
so one of the first things he wanted to do was he wanted to create the Medina state, which sounds nice, but to do it in today's political climate with world politics on hand, next to impossible. I don't want to say impossible, next to impossible, because nobody wants to see that kind of model succeed.
hmm,
Geopolitics.
yeah, yeah,
Not even geopolitics, internal politics of Pakistan.
hmm.
Why would anybody want to see that succeed?
Yeah,
Because it takes
even
money away from you.
yeah, even to create like a micro state, like
Yeah.
I remember during the but I don't remember. I was too. It was only 14. I didn't realize what was going on. But I remember reading about how Pakistan helped Bosnian refugees and basically created a whole town for them. And then for Bosnians fleeing the genocide, and they basically ran it themselves. It was like a self-sufficient Bosnian village, and I believe it's still there today, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
Um,
Pakistani army was one of the armies which helped assist in Bosnia as well. There's a Sheikh Mufti Taqi Uthmani who used to be the one of the justices of the Pakistani court system. He's a mufti, he's a scholar, but he's also a lawyer. A lot of people don't know that, and he's very well respected. And he's like, he went to Bosnia, he met with the people, they respected him a lot, and they would tell him stories about how the Pakistani military helped them. But even before that, they told him stories about how they would see people who would come out from the mountains, and essentially they would fight off the opposing forces, and then they would disappear. And they're like, we'd never seen men like this before. And they're like, we don't even know who they were. And they're like, we swear that they were angels helping us and saving us.
wow.
So Yeah. So, that's a different story. But like, um, so Imran Khan, so they have states, right? So they had the state government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is referred to as KPK. And when they had the government over there, they even instituted a stipend for school teachers, like uh, teachers who taught Qaeda, teachers who taught Quran, the muadhins of masjids and stuff like that to help them out. 10,000 rupees, which isn't much, but they got a lot of backlash from, other religious opposition who are in politics. They were like, no, why are you giving them this money? And a lot of religious scholars who are very, conservative, they were like, no, he's doing something good. He's
Mm,
looking out for the scholars. And when you look out for the scholars, Allah rewards you.
mm,
And so, he's not perfect. Like I said, he has a past. But before he got elected, he tried to find a good wife. He went, he got married one time, it didn't work out. Then he got married a second time to a religious woman. And with this woman, he's done much better. She helps him out. She offers him religious advice. She's some sort of a saint or something, so she helps him out. She's very austere, and one of his things was austerity. Like
mm,
one of the first things he did, there's actually a YouTube video if you watch it, it's really funny. They had like I think over 100 cars at the prime minister's house when he took over, and he auctioned everything off. They had an exotic zoo there. They had exotic animals there. He auctioned them off. He auctioned everything off. He put a limit on the amount of cookies you could have in a meeting.
mm,
um he put a limit on tea. You could only have tea when somebody important was coming. You couldn't just have tea for everybody who comes. Meetings were limited to a certain amount of people. He turned a lot of like government houses or buildings into colleges and schools. He did a lot of things which were good.
mm.
He stopped like so what happened is he's at first he would like ride his bicycle to work from his house or something, right? And they had to stop that because it was causing massive traffic jams. And they're like, look, you want to save money, just use the helicopter. We won't cause traffic jams. So, certain things were unreasonable, which he was doing. But he was trying to show that, hey, I'm a simple guy.
Mm.
He introduced this culture of, generally speaking, when you wear a kurta shalwar, like the Pakistani dress, you don't wear tennis shoes with it. He introduced the idea of wearing tennis shoes with it. So now everybody wears tennis shoes with it. Like, it's an okay thing to do. So the idea of you don't have to buy special slippers or anything like that. It sounds like, yeah, he didn't. While he was the leader of Pakistan, he hasn't worn suits.
Mm.
Um, when one of the leaders of the Middle East came, he took the car himself and went to go pick him up. He didn't send his driver. So
Wow.
so he did a lot of things which were like, wow. He went to the UN and he introduced the bill to acknowledge I think it was Islamophobia Day or something like that. And he took large steps which no other leaders have taken to honor Islam and to honor Muslims. And he introduced something called the Sehat card, which is a health insurance card for mm, extremely underprivileged people
Mm,
who can't afford health coverage. And these people were able to get medicines, these people were able to get surgeries, all sorts of things.
mm,
And these were all sorts of things which he wanted to institute in the whole country, not just in a certain part of Pakistan.
mm.
That he had goals, he had intentions, and they were more Pakistan focused. Like how they say America first, it's
Yeah.
Pakistan first. And many times he would go on interviews and he would say, I don't care what any country wants to intervene in Pakistan, we're not gonna, kneel down in front of them.
Mm,
And he was at first when he was elected, when he came in, he was heavily supported by the military institution. And then when he got essentially, I guess, thrown out, he went heavily against them. And that's one of
mm,
the reasons why he's having the problems he's having.
mm. Well, it sounds like he wants to reconcile with the army chief, which that was another thing that I thought was pretty interesting. It seems that he wants to put like bury the hatchet and do things for the greater good, but I just don't know how feasible that is. I mean, it would be
I mean,
wonderful if like he'd be able to mend the situation, but
I
it's
mean, at the end of the day in Pakistan, the military are the kingmakers.
mm,
They always have been and they always will be essentially in
yeah.
Pakistan.
Well, Erdogan, I mean, when Erdogan first got elected, because I worked with Turks, they were
Yeah,
saying that it's a similar situation in Turkey, that the military has far greater power than the government. But
they
over
do.
time, that has waned. Erdogan is sort of like, clawed up the ladder a bit, I assume.
I feel like he's cleaned up the military a little bit, like to put in more loyalist.
Mhm.
And that's, but you have to remember something. It always doesn't work in your favor. If you look at Egypt, when Hosni Mubarak was overthrown and finally they had elections and the MB won,
Mhm.
Morsi appointed his own general who overthrew him and essentially murdered him and is in charge now.
Oh wow, I did not know
Sisi,
that.
Sisi,
Yeah.
Sisi was the appointee of Morsi.
Wow. Wow. It's yeah. I mean, very delicate situations we're dealing with. I mean,
Yeah,
hmm. I mean, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help the people in Pakistan.
yeah,
May Allah
absolutely.
subhanahu wa ta'ala help, like Imran, brother Imran, get elected again. I mean, it would be wonderful. I mean, it would be great to have another. We have a strong leader in Turkey in the Muslim world. I mean, like Malaysia is doing pretty good, Indonesia is doing pretty good, but it would be great if Pakistan could have someone who cares about their people and everything. He also other thing that I read, that I heard in an interview is that he also wants the Pakistani diaspora to come back to Pakistan and offer their
Yeah.
expertise. I don't know. Do you know anyone who took up that offer or decided to move back? Or I think it would
I
be an enormous
don't
transition.
I don't think a lot of people moved back. A lot of people sent money though. A lot of people
Okay.
sent money. There was, the remittances which were coming in while he was in charge were massive because they weren't taking the money. Like
Mm,
right now, some of my relatives tell me that if somebody sends like you $1,000 or something, right? Immediately the bank calls you, hey, you have to pay tax or something like that on this. But that wasn't happening while he was in charge. And then, a lot of people were like, hey, look, let's see how it goes. If things improve, we may move back.
mm,
But I don't think things ever got to that point because, like I said, 2018 he gets elected. 2020 COVID kicks in. I mean, didn't really get too much time to really be like, hey, look, the country is great now. Everybody move back. And Pakistan is in such a
mm,
bad state, of disrepair. Uh, it's gonna take, you know, 2 to 3 Imran Khans to make it work. It's just, you know, the situation there is not good. And my wife was saying, she was telling me, she's like, the Pakistani, the geography of Pakistan. That's one of the reasons why military has so much power is because Pakistan is obviously has its own ports.
mm,
It's surrounded by India. It has a border with China, has Kashmir, Afghanistan, some other countries, stuff like that. It has so many borders with so many different countries. You always have to have the army on your side.
mm,
That's just a situation. And obviously crime is rampant, so you have to depend on factions which aren't military, which are like the Rangers, which are above the police but below the army. We have so many different militias and army forces in Pakistan. They're like, oh, okay, there's another one. And it's just the situation over there has been volatile for so long. And obviously, if you look at the history, they've had a few wars with India. Then obviously, when Pakistan and Bangladesh were one, there was East Pakistan and West Pakistan, which doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you even run a country like that?
can't.
Um, you can't. And obviously, whatever happened with our Bengali brothers and sisters, um, the atrocities which happened, they were horrible. They should have never happened. It's sad.
Mm,
Um, we're Muslims. We shouldn't. Nothing bad should happen between two groups of Muslims. Things
mm,
happen, but obviously they shouldn't. But
mm.
Pakistan's had a very complicated history, and Imran Khan coming for 3 years, 3.5 years, you can't fix that. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And like I said, one of the problems was he made way too many promises,
Mm.
and when your promises you can't fulfill them, people lose hope in you, which technically they shouldn't, but we're humans. That's just the way we
Well,
operate.
yeah, politics runs that way, though. You need to, have make huge promises to get elected. I mean, no one runs an
Yeah.
election being like, oh, I want to mildly improve the situation in our country because that's what's feasible.
Badly improve the situation. Yeah, no, no. So over here, every election cycle, what do they say? Oh, we're gonna increase Medicare and Medicaid because they know majority of the voters are old people. So it's
Mm,
like, oh, what do they want to hear? Oh, we're gonna increase Medicare and Medicaid. You're not gonna have to pay as much. You're gonna get more Social Security. Oh, we're gonna vote for this guy. It's just like that. It's like, oh, okay, we're gonna turn Pakistan into like the next Dubai. Oh, okay, let's vote for this guy. You know,
Yeah.
it's just how it
Yeah,
is.
I know. Well, I mean, you never know. I mean, like Allah knows best. You look at countries, 20, 30 years ago, that were in really bad situations and now they're
Yeah.
absolutely thriving. I mean, anything
Yeah.
is possible, inshallah. I mean,
No, absolutely.
like in the 90s, if you would have told people in the 90s that, China is going to overtake United States as like, the largest economy in the world, they would have thought you were absolutely insane. I mean, like
I suppose so.
and now, I mean, even the transit system, theoretically, United States had a better rail system, and now, like, it just sucks compared to like,
Yeah, I mean,
countries in the
we
East.
have we have the same railway system which was built by like, Asian slaves. You gotta improve on that a little bit.
Oh, yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, it's nothing. It's just even Canada's like rail system is just basically there's not even a Via Rail that goes
You
to
guys have a rail
Calgary.
system?
There's a Via Rail system. It's federally run,
You guys don't
and
you guys don't travel on mooses?
maybe in the north,
Maybe
but
the thing.
no, I mean, it's so bad that even there's no Via Rail that goes to Calgary. That's how bad it is. It
That's
goes to
just
Edmonton, but not Calgary. So
wow.
yeah, it's like the fourth largest city in Canada. Um,
I don't know.
yeah, so I mean, inshallah, I hope the situation gets better there. I mean, one more thing, I noticed that like they kind of sensationalized the fact that Imran Khan was basically one of the only world leaders that was trying to establish talks and work with the Taliban. Because I heard him saying in an interview, like, like obviously wants the situation to improve in Afghanistan as well. But if no one talks to them or no one, tries to, establish, relations with the Taliban, like what's going to happen? They're just going to be completely isolated, and the situation of the country will get worse.
I mean, look,
So
Trump established talks with them.
that's true.
I mean, he was good, bad politician, whatever you want to say. He established talks with them, and
Mm,
he pulled Trump pulled out the troops.
mm,
I mean, Trump, as bad or as many bad things as he did, all politicians do bad things. All politicians say bad things. They may not even say bad things, but they still end up doing bad things. Trump, for his part, was so focused on America, he wasn't focused on drone warfare. He wasn't focused on a lot of these things. And he focused a lot of his energy on America. And so he was like, hey, let's get our troops out of there. And
yeah.
he established talks with them. So I don't see why, if Imran Khan wanted to establish talks with them, that was such a bad thing. If Trump can do it, why can't Imran Khan do it?
Right, and that's one of the failures of like these conservative parties because they think that they can't agree with Muslims on anything. But
Yeah.
when it comes to foreign policy, if you have like an isolationist, a party that runs on like a more isolationist platform, absolutely, they want to see a strong Pakistan because like people want to move want to move to these countries and they would if there was a stable Pakistan people would just many people just want to go voluntarily,
Yeah.
but unfortunately the situation there is remains to be seen
I
and when
mean,
will
look, if there's a stable Pakistan, the amount of tourism Pakistan got during Imran Khan's era was just crazy.
oh I didn't know that.
They opened up the country and they had like Australian kids coming. They had like, kids from Europe coming, and they were like, hey, come to Pakistan, buy your own ticket, come to Pakistan, we'll take you around. And so many vloggers went to Pakistan and they basically opened up Pakistan for so many people.
Hmm,
And now with the situation, you think anybody's want to go to Pakistan right now?
no.
Pakistani people don't want to go to Pakistan. Think anybody else is want to go to Pakistan? No, probably
Hmm,
not. So I mean, you have to be fair about it. You have to understand it. We have a prime minister right now who stood in front of Parliament and I mean not Parliament, who stood in front of the UN and said a sentence which, a paragraph of sentences which didn't even make any sense. Um, there Nawaz Sharif's daughter was telling the story about how she was in jail and she didn't even have an iron to iron her clothes. So she used to take a frying pan and put it on a stove and warm it up so she could iron her clothes. And people are like, you had a stove in jail and a frying pan? It's like, so you have this class of people who are so out of touch with the actual public that they're like, oh, we had it so hard, and Nawaz Sharif's like, oh, my health is very bad, I'm gonna die, and he's like, I have to go to London for treatment, and the next week he's sitting in like a Pakistani restaurant having chai, and then he's having like KFC delivered to his house every day. And I know people do things which are not right, but like people in Ramadan would go outside of his house, and they would take a megaphone, and they would 15 minutes before suhoor, or 15 minutes before suhoor ends, before fajr, they would go to his house and they would be like, it's suhoor time, wake up and fast, you shaitan. Oh, we forgot shaitans don't fast. Things like this. People do this. People are
Whoa.
pretty vicious. It was like, uh, another example. Imran Khan had good relations with the all of these people from before. And Imran Khan, one time they were discussing a penthouse, and he was explaining to Nawaz Sharif what the penthouse is. And he's like, it's at the top of the building. It's like, the uppermost, apartment. And, it's sort of like has its own ceiling and stuff like that. So Nawaz Sharif asked him, he's like, what happens if the wind blows too hard? Does it fly off? And so you have people like this who are running a country, who made deals to create a railway system, and who was the contractor, his son-in-law, things like this, or his cousin or something. It's been historically, it's been going on. And generally speaking, even in the United States, a lot of times you'll have people who give contracts to their friends or
Mm,
to their buddies or stuff like that. So it's no different. It's just, in a different packaging. But if you're trying to run a country and you're trying to run it on Islamic principles, that's not the way to do it. Imran Khan tried. He wasn't very good at it. He made a lot of mistakes, but all politicians make mistakes.
mm,
I just think the fact is that he needs to be given a fair chance. He wasn't given a fair chance.
mm,
There was a lot of roadblocks in his way. He tried to get past them, but it's politics. You have to pay your way out.
mm.
You have to pay those bribes. He didn't want to pay the bribes. He wanted to stick on the Islamic principles. He didn't want to pay bribes. And people are like, "Oh, he's a fornicator and he's an adulterer." I'm like, "Look, you're counting his personal sins which he's accumulated in the past. He's trying to do right now. It's like if he's asked Allah for forgiveness, Allah is forgiving. It's like, you can't hold somebody like, hey, he used to sin before. Now let's just throw him into the garbage."
No, you can't do that. I mean, like, and people's iman goes up and down. I mean, even some of the most
Yeah.
biggest du'at that we know at one
Yeah.
point are admitted that on their own to living like an atheist or an agnostic
Yeah.
or non-religious lifestyle. So
I mean, as I give you my convert brothers and sisters, as I see you, as I give my convert brothers and sisters a hard time, I'm like, look, the Sahaba were all converts. You guys have no excuse not to be doing better. So, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu was a convert. Like before he was not a Muslim, he became a Muslim. Look at him, he's Omar. So what's it called? So people have a past. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, you hear stories about him, what he did in the past. He cried about it once he became Muslim. You hear about other Sahaba. You hear about people, Khalid bin Walid, radiallahu anhu, the most revered warrior of Islam. He killed Muslims before he became a Muslim. And he reformed himself.
even on a national level, I mean, like every society in the world that's now majority Muslim, at some point their ancestors hated Islam and Muslims
Yeah.
and fought against them. So,
Yeah, I mean,
we're
that's
no,
just the way it is.
I know.
It's and it's they used to say that nobody wanted to rule over the Arabs because they were seen as so uncivilized, and just a society which was rampant with nonsense, and nobody wanted to rule over them. And then you hear further that nobody wanted to rule over the people of Hind, which was India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, that area. And then when the Muslim armies of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, they went there, Muhammad bin Qasim and them, and they basically cleared up the space. But you still see till today that those people of that area, like even if you go to Iraq, that they say that fitna will come from Iraq, you still go to Iraq till today, you see that happening. So if you go to Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, you still see a lot of those practices from before that I don't know what it is. Certain areas or certain places just have something in the dirt or something in the water that it just you cannot cleanse the people of certain elements. And
Well,
not to,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't self-flagellate to that extent. I mean, as Islam for Europeans grows, I'm sure that like any sub community of European Muslims, we're going to have our own problems,
yeah,
and
yeah.
those are never going to go away. So we're
Yeah.
not special.
Yeah, no, I obviously nobody's special. I'm like, it's just like, hey, let's have a bit more. clear perspective on things. Like, how come we can't have it? It's just like some people are ridiculous. I was watching a video about some guys. They were like, there was a lady, she was suffering from like magic, and magic is real in Islam. We acknowledge that people do magic on people. That
Mm,
so they were trying to cure her or help her, and this was, I believe it was somewhere, I don't even know where it was, and it was horrible that what somebody had done, the sort of magic they had done on her. And then you go to Pakistan and people still do things like that, where they do magic on people, they send jinns on people, stuff like that. And
mm,
we're like, look, we're supposed to be better than this.
mm.
And how can we as a country get better when on an individual level we're not getting better? Like you said earlier, for the whole country to become better, we as individuals have to do better.
Yeah,
And
inshallah.
for Pakistan's success on an individual level, we have to do better. We
Mm,
have to be more honest. We have to be more forthcoming. Our business deals have to be in line with, the teachings of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And until that doesn't happen and that doesn't occur, when you go to buy a dozen eggs, one or two of those eggs will have cracks in them. When you go to buy a pound of grapes, you'll end up with 0.95 pounds of grapes.
mm.
If those things continue to happen on a micro level, you can't expect the country on a macro level to change.
Yeah, well, inshallah, it will change. Like
Inshallah.
I'm confident. If you look at other Muslim countries that were totally secular, years ago, I mean, now they're, mashallah, like practicing far much more.
Alhamdulillah.
So it is possible. Inshallah, the situation in Pakistan will get better. But that's all our time for today. Thank you so much, Asad, for stopping
Jazakallah khair.
by. Please subscribe to Asad's YouTube channel, the Straight Path Podcast, as well. He's got some great content. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Otherwise, Asad is like closing
No,
remarks.
Jazakallah khair for the opportunity, Robert, and Allah forgive me for any mistakes.
Okay, me too, inshallah. All right,
Inshallah.
so that's it. I'll cut it for today. Thank you for watching Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.